Welcome, boys and girls, to money video number 2. Last week we did a money video and we were introducing all of the coins and what they were worth. But just so you know, for second grade, all you have to know about money is to be able to identify the penny, the nickel, the dime, and the quarter, and say how much they're worth, and also how many pennies are in each one of those. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Last week I did send 3 worksheets home, 2 on identifying money and a 3rd one on adding some money. But you do not have to know how to put all that together. They'll work on that in 2nd grade. But I know some of you are ready to add money. But let's look at the penny, and I've got a rhyme to help you be able to identify the penny. So as you'll recall, last week we looked at our enlarged pennies. Our heads, the Abraham Lincoln side, and the tail side has the Lincoln Memorial. But here's a rhyme for you that may help you identify a penny. Penny, 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 easily spent, copper, brown, and worth 1 cent. Say it with me a couple times. Penny, penny, easily spent, copper, brown, and worth 1 cent. And so here, remember we talked about one way you can write it as 1 cent. You can also write it out 1 cent. But here, you've got a dollar sign, and this is your penny because a penny is part of a dollar. So if you have 100 pennies, you have a dollar, but you don't need to know that right now. So let's say it again. Penny, penny, easily spent, copper, brown, and worth 1 cent. See how it's copper brown? So let's join me over there at the counter and we'll look at some pennies. Okay, boys and girls, we're over here at the counter and I have about 25 pennies over here. And you can see some of them are newer, and that means they're a little bit brighter. And some of these that are older and darker, they are older pennies. But as you can see, we have Abraham Lincoln on the head side. But some of these pennies have the Lincoln Memorial, just like we had talked about. But some of these pennies, the newer pennies, if you'll notice this one, the back of it doesn't have the Lincoln Memorial. It has a shield on the back of it that says 1 cent. So sometimes you'll see newer pennies that have different things on them as well. So these are our pennies, and remember our little rhyme that I taught you. Penny, penny, easily spent, copper, brown, and worth 1 cent. Say it with me. Penny, penny, easily spent, copper, brown, and worth 1 cent. All right, go back to the board with me. So we looked at the penny. Now let's look at the nickel. So I have our same nickel that we were looking at last week. The head side of it that has Thomas Jefferson, and the tail side of it that has Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello, which is in Virginia, right above North Carolina. But I have a rhyme for the nickel. Are you ready? You can read it with me. Nickel, nickel, thick and fat, worth 5 cents. I know that. Say it with me again. Nickel, nickel, thick and fat, worth 5 cents. I know that. And so here I've got my pictures of my nickel, just like I do here, a little bit smaller. And this is one way you can write 5 cents, or you can write it out like this, or 5 cents is 5 pieces of a dollar. So let's say it again. Nickel, nickel, thick and fat, worth 5 cents. I know that. All right, join me over here at the counter. We'll look at some nickels. So boys and girls, we're over here at the counter, and I have some nickels laid out for you. Again, kind of like the pennies, some are older, some are newer, but I wanted to show you some differences in newer nickels and older nickels. Here, like you and I were saying earlier, here's a nickel with Thomas Jefferson, the side profile of him, and of course that's kind of old and dirty, but there's the back with Monticello. But some nickels still have him on it. If you'll notice, that's still Thomas Jefferson, but it's a front view of him. Let's look at the back to see if the back's the same. The back still has his home on it, So here are some nickels, and let's look at let's say our rhyme together. Nickel, nickel, thick and fat, worth 5 cents. I know that. Nickel, nickel, thick and fat, worth 5 cents. I know that. Now, remember, we have to be able to say how many pennies are in a nickel. So let's move all my nickels away except for one. So if I have a nickel, I need to know how many pennies equal that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1 nickel is equal to 5 pennies. So if you're needing to give somebody 5 cents, you could give them 5 pennies, or you could give them 1 whole nickel. That is equal to 5 of these pennies. It's easier to carry one of these around than your pennies. All right, join me back at the board. We'll look at dimes. So we've looked at the penny and the nickel. Let's look at the dime, and I have a rhyme for the dime as well that'll help you. You'll recall last week we had our large pictures of our dime, and it has Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was a president many years ago before I was born. And then we have the back of the dime, the tail side, which have some torches and olive branches. So let's look at our rhyme. Dime, dime, little and thin, I remember you're worth 10. Say it with me. Dime, dime, little and thin, I remember you're worth 10. And here I have my small pictures of my dimes, the head side and the tails. And then it's worth 10 cents. That's one way you can write it. Or you can write it like this. Or you can write it with your dollar sign. And notice 10 cents, it is 10 pieces of a dollar. So let's say it again. Dime, dime, little and thin, I remember you're worth 10. Join me at the counter. We'll look at some dimes. So here we are over at the counter looking at some dimes. And notice how they're smaller. Let's look and kind of compare with a penny. If you look and see, a dime's worth 10 cents, and this is worth 1 cent, but it's smaller. And if you compare that to the size of the nickel that we looked at earlier, there's the penny worth 1 cent, there's the nickel worth 5 cents, and there's the dime. That's why our rhyme is dime, dime, little and thin, I remember you're worth 10. Dime, dime, little and thin, I remember you're worth 10. So what that means is this 1 dime is worth 10 pennies. So this 1 dime is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This 1 dime is worth 10 cents. Remember our rhyme. Dime, dime, little and thin, I remember you're worth 10. So a dime is worth 10 cents, 10 pennies. You need to memorize that. All right. We didn't really talk about what was on these. Let me push them back over here. Like we mentioned earlier, it's got Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was one of our previous presidents. And then the tail side of it has the torches with the olive branches. All right, so we're going to look at quarters next. So the last money that we're going to look at today, to make sure we really know it, we got to memorize all this. The quarter, we looked at it last week briefly. The quarter, it has George Washington. He was our first president, and it's got a side profile of him. It means it's showing the side of his face. And then the back of it, the tail side, remember we call that the head side, and this is the tail side. It shows the bald eagle, and the bald eagle, it's got an olive branch below it, and it's got arrows. And those were 13 arrows for our 13 original colonies. We've got our rhyme for the quarter. You ready? Look at it with me. You can say it with me. Quarter, quarter, big and bold. You're worth 25, I'm told. Say it with me. Quarter, quarter, big and bold. You're worth 25, I'm told. and that means it's worth 25 cents. It's worth 25 pennies, and you can write it that way, 25 with the C with the line through it, or 25 cents out like that, the long way. And notice our number's getting bigger. 25 cents is that much part of a dollar, okay? It's 1/4 of a dollar. There are 4 quarters in a dollar, but you don't have to know that, but some of you may already know that. Say the rhyme with me again, please. Quarter, quarter, big and bold. You're worth 25, I'm told. Join me at the counter. We'll look at some quarters. So we're over here at the counter, and we're looking at our quarters. Like we had said on our big screen, the head side shows the side profile of George Washington, our first president, and the tail side will show the bald eagle, but there are also the back of quarters have different tail sides because they are put out in honor of the different states. So sometimes if you see a quarter that looks a little bit different and the tail side does not have the eagle on it, that's because there's one design for each state. So you'll see 50 different kinds, and this is not all of them. This is just some that I have at the house. Let's look at how much a quarter is worth. So if I have 1 quarter here, I need to know what it looks like and to be able to say that's a quarter and it's worth 25 cents. So that means 25 pennies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So 1 quarter is equal to 25 pennies. Remember our rhyme that we just learned. Quarter, quarter, big and bold. You're worth 25, I'm told. Quarter, quarter, big and bold. You're worth 25, I'm told. So let's close up our lesson. To be ready for 2nd grade, you need to be able to identify a penny, a nickel, a quarter, and a dime. I should have said them in the correct order. A penny, nickel, dime, and quarter. You need to be able to say what they're worth, and these rhymes can help you. So I will make sure that I send these 4 pages to your parents, and they can print them, and they don't have to print them in color, but they could just print them in black and white, and you could work on memorizing each one, what these look like, and how many pennies they're worth. I hope you enjoyed money video number 2.